Where is the Ark of the Covenant? According to the Bible, the Ark of the Covenant was not just some mystical object. It symbolized the very presence of God among his people. Inside were the tablets of the Ten Commandments, Aaron's rod that budded, and a jar of manna, physical reminders of moments when God directly intervened in Israel's history. But then comes a question that has crossed centuries. Where is the Ark today? The fact is, the Old Testament does not record the fate of the Ark after the destruction of Solomon's Temple in 586 BC, when the Babylonians invaded Jerusalem. It simply vanishes from the text. And to make things even more curious, the prophet Jeremiah makes a rather enigmatic statement, saying that the Ark would no longer be remembered, nor would it be missed or searched for, as if its mission had somehow already been fulfilled. So, what really happened? Over the centuries, several theories have emerged. It may have been hidden before the Babylonian invasion by priests or leaders in some secret place to protect it from destruction. There is also a very ancient tradition claiming that the Ark has been kept to this day in the Church of St. Mary of Zion, in the city of Axum, Ethiopia, supposedly stolen during the reign of King Solomon. But no one, apart from the official guardian, is allowed to see it, which of course raises a lot of doubt, and even more curiosity. Others believe it is buried somewhere in Jerusalem, maybe hidden in underground tunnels, caves near the ancient temple, waiting for the right time to be revealed. The truth is, no one really knows. To this day, no archaeologist, no excavation, and no discovery has been able to confirm where the Ark is, or if it even still exists. Who is the Antichrist? The word Antichrist is perhaps one of the most famous when it comes to the end times, but there's a curious detail that most people don't notice. That word doesn't even appear in the book of Revelation. Seriously, it only appears in the letters of John, and there he makes something very clear, something people often overlook. Little children, it is the last time. And as you have heard that Antichrist shall come, even now are there many Antichrists. In other words, it's not just one. But then, who is that figure from Revelation, the so-called beast? And who is the man of sin that appears in 2 Thessalonians? Are we talking about the same person? Or are they different things? Or maybe you're a mix of both ideas. A real person who represents a global evil system. The world has tried to figure this out for centuries. Throughout history, several names have been pointed out as the Antichrist of their time. Nero, the emperor who persecuted Christians. Constantine, according to some. Napoleon, Hitler. Various popes, depending on who's accusing. And of course, modern politicians. But to this day, the fact is, no one knows exactly who it is, whether they've already appeared or are still to come. The two witnesses of Revelation. In the book of Revelation, chapter 11, two very mysterious figures show up, known simply as the two witnesses. Who are they? Good question. What we do know is that they appear during the end times, prophesy for 1,260 days, and they are not playing around. They have authority to shut heaven, basically stop the rain, turn water into blood, and even strike the earth with plagues. At the end of their mission, they are killed. But after 3 days, they literally resurrect in front of everyone and are taken up to heaven in a cloud. But then comes the question that has echoed through centuries. Who exactly are they? There are many theories, but no definitive answer. Some believe they could be Elijah and Enoch. The reasoning is simple. They are the only two humans in the Bible who never died. They were taken alive by God. So, according to this view, they would return to fulfill this role, and only then experience death. Others believe they are Elijah and Moses. And this also makes sense, because the miracles performed by the two witnesses are basically the same as those performed by them. Plagues in Egypt, fire from heaven, water turned into blood, stopping the rain. And interestingly, they are the two who appear with Jesus at the Transfiguration. Others argue that they are symbols. The witnesses aren't specific people, but represent something greater. The church, or the law and the prophets, the scriptures, or a group of faithful believers, both Jews and Gentiles, who will testify during the tribulation. The truth is, this question will only be answered when it all finally happens. But one thing is certain: whoever they are, They're going to cause trouble, and the world won't be able to ignore them. The lost years of Jesus, the Bible tells us about the birth of Jesus, one episode from his childhood when he was 12 years old in the temple. And after that, complete silence. From age 12 to 30, we basically know nothing. The inevitable question is, what did Jesus do during all that time? The most likely and most grounded answer is that he lived like any Jewish young man in Galilee, working as a carpenter in Nazareth, living a simple, ordinary life, and yet, at the same time, absolutely extraordinary, because he was God himself living as one of us. But of course, over the centuries, lots of alternative theories have popped up. Some suggest that Jesus traveled to places like India, Egypt, or other spiritual centers of the time in search of wisdom. But honestly, none of this holds up historically or theologically. And there's more. One of the best-known apocryphal texts is the so-called Infancy Gospel of Thomas, which, let's just say, is super weird. This text describes a child Jesus doing bizarre miracles, like giving life to clay birds, or even cursing and killing a child who accidentally bumped into him. The problem, this version of Jesus has powers, but zero maturity. Totally different from the Jesus we know from the Gospels, full of love, compassion, and self-control. That's exactly why the church never accepted these texts as part of the Bible. So, what's the most coherent explanation? Simple. The Gospels didn't record that phase because it wasn't the focus. Jesus' mission wasn't to be a spiritual master since childhood, but to live a full human life in obedience until the right moment to start his ministry. The Gospels have always had a clear focus: his teachings, his miracles, his death, and his resurrection. And the rest remains in silence. A silence that, by itself, already speaks volumes. Paul's thorn in the flesh. In the New Testament, the Apostle Paul mentions a problem that deeply troubled him. He describes it like this: "And lest I should be exalted above measure, through the abundance of the revelations, there was given to me a thorn in the flesh, the messenger of Satan to buffet me." But he never said exactly what that thorn was. And, of course, that opened the door to one of the biggest mysteries of the New Testament. Theories about what that thorn was are endless, and some are wildly different from each other. Could it have been a physical illness? Maybe. Some suggest epilepsy, severe vision problems, migraines, or even malaria, or perhaps an emotional or psychological struggle. Anxiety, depression, not unlikely. He could have carried guilt for having persecuted and even killed Christians before his conversion. Or maybe his thorn was the constant persecutions. After all, Paul lived being imprisoned, beaten, stoned, rejected, and threatened from every side. The fact is, Paul never made it clear what it was. And maybe that was intentional. Maybe God wanted it that way, because somehow this thorn becomes a universal metaphor. Each of us knows what it means to carry a thorn in the flesh, whether physical, emotional, or spiritual, something that humbles you, something that reminds you of your total dependence on God. And that's exactly the conclusion Paul came to. "My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness." What will the millennium be like? Few topics in the Bible have generated as much debate, and honestly as much confusion, as this one. The millennium of Revelation 20. The text describes a period of 1,000 years in which Satan is bound. The nations are freed from his influence, and the saints reign with Christ. And then comes another huge mystery that no one can ignore. Why, after those 1,000 years of peace, does God allow Satan to be released again to deceive the nations? The text, unfortunately, doesn't answer why. It simply describes what will happen: a final rebellion, the last judgment, and then the climax of history: a new heaven and a new earth. The millennium is without a doubt one of the most mysterious issues in the book of Revelation. Opinions are wildly divided. Is the millennium literal? Like a real 1,000-year period here on earth, with Jesus visibly, physically reigning over the world? With Satan completely bound during that time? Or is it symbolic, representing a long era of gospel advancement, where Satan is restrained, but not entirely removed from the scene? Maybe. Only at the end of history will we know for sure who was right. Where is the Garden of Eden? Another great mystery of the Bible appears right on its very first pages. According to Genesis, God planted a garden in Eden and placed Adam and Eve there. The text describes a river that flowed out of Eden and divided into 4 rivers: Pishon, Gihon, Tigris, and Euphrates. And this is where the real mystery begins. The Tigris and Euphrates, we know, they're still flowing today, cutting through modern-day Iraq. But where are the Pishon and Gihon? And even more, where was the Garden of Eden itself? There's no shortage of theories. Some believe Eden was located right in Mesopotamia, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Others point to the region of Armenia, near the headwaters of those rivers. Some Jewish mystical traditions claim that Eden is no longer in this physical world. It was simply removed from our dimension and now exists in a spiritual realm, invisible to us. And of course, there are those who say that Noah's flood destroyed everything, erasing any physical trace of this lost paradise. The fact is, no one has ever found it. Despite countless theories, studies, searches, and even archaeological expeditions, no discovery has ever confirmed the location of the Garden of Eden. And the mystery remains: the lost tribes of Israel. After the Assyrian captivity in the 8th century BC, something happened that still puzzles theologians, historians, and curious minds alike. The 10 tribes of the northern kingdom of Israel simply vanished from history. Seriously, they just disappear from the biblical map. And here comes the question that has crossed generations. What happened to them? No one knows for sure. Some believe they were assimilated by other nations, mixed in, lost their identity, and ceased to exist as a distinct group. Others think they migrated to distant unknown regions and remained preserved for centuries. And honestly, this mystery grew so big that even today there are movements claiming to be descendants of these lost tribes. People from Ethiopia, India, Central Asia. But the simplest answer, and the one most historians agree on, is that the tribes simply lost their identity and that many of them took refuge in Judah. In fact, Jerusalem seems to have grown 5 times in size right after the Assyrian conquest of Israel. And the most interesting part? The New Testament itself gives clues that in the future, God will gather all the tribes of Israel. All of them, including those that seem to have disappeared from history. Who are the 144,000? Whether it's literal, symbolic, or spiritual, we don't really know. What we can say for sure is that the lost tribes of Israel remain one of the greatest mysteries of the Bible. The day the sun stood still. Few miracles in the Bible are as grand, and at the same time as mysterious, as this one. In the middle of a battle, Joshua prays a prayer that, let's be honest, is incredibly bold. Sun, stand thou still upon Gibeon, and thou moon in the valley of Ajalon. And to everyone's surprise, the sun stopped. The moon stopped. The day simply continued until Israel won the battle. But then comes the question everyone keeps asking: how is that even possible? Did God literally stop the Earth's rotation without causing tsunamis, earthquakes, and a geological apocalypse? Possible. Or was it a local phenomenon? Something like a supernatural perception granted to those present, a miracle that affected how they experienced time rather than the actual motion of celestial bodies. Or maybe it was just one of those miracles that's so far beyond our understanding, so far beyond the laws of physics, that it doesn't even make sense trying to explain it with human logic. The fact is, the text doesn't give details. It just states something very clearly, and there was no day like that before it or after it. And to this day, this remains not only one of the most unbelievable miracles in the Bible, but also one of the greatest mysteries in human history. Who are the sons of God and the Nephilim? This is, without exaggeration, the most controversial mystery in the entire Old Testament. In Genesis 6, we find a passage that, even today, raises more questions than answers. There were giants on the earth in those days. And also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bore children to them, the same became mighty men who were of old, men of renown. And now the question is, who exactly were these sons of God? There are basically 3 main interpretations. Fallen angels. Yes, some believe these were celestial beings who crossed a forbidden line, had physical relations with human women, and from that came a bizarre hybrid lineage, descendants of Seth. According to this view, the sons of God were the righteous lineage of Seth, who ended up mixing with the descendants of Cain, the rebellious line. ancient kings, or rulers. In this interpretation, sons of God was a term used to refer to kings, nobles, or powerful leaders, as was common in some ancient cultures. And what about the Nephilim? Well, more questions. Some believe they were literally giants, a hybrid race, a mix of celestial beings with humans. But if they were wiped out in the flood, why do they appear again in later biblical texts? Others think maybe it was just a metaphor to describe extremely powerful, violent, and dominant men. And there are also those who believe that the giants had nothing to do with the relationship between angels and humans, that they were simply contemporaries of those events. Since the text isn't completely clear about whether the Nephilim were direct offspring of that union. As you can see, the truth is, the debate has never reached a consensus. This mystery remains completely open. Why did Jesus allow the demons to enter the pigs? Jumping to the New Testament, we find one of the strangest, and at the same time most mysterious, episodes in the entire life of Jesus. Jesus encounters a man possessed by a legion of demons. And in the middle of that intense confrontation, the demons make a request that, let's be honest, is completely unexpected. Send us into the swine, that we may enter into them. And to the surprise of absolutely anyone reading this text, Jesus allows it. Immediately, the demons leave the man, enter the pigs, and the entire herd rushes down the cliff into the sea and drowns. But then comes the question that has echoed for centuries. Why did Jesus let this happen? The answers? Well, they vary. It may have been a way to make the destructive power of the demons visibly clear. A dramatic, almost theatrical illustration of the spiritual deliverance that man had just received. Or maybe it was a symbolic act, a kind of statement against that town, which, in the end, even after witnessing the miracle, chose to ask Jesus to leave because of their financial loss. Either way, the text doesn't explain. Jesus simply allows it. No comments, no explanations. And that leaves us, the readers, wondering to this day. Why? The Star of Bethlehem, in the story of Jesus' birth, there's one detail that always stands out, and still sparks debate to this day. The star of the wise men. The text says that wise men from the east were guided to Bethlehem by a star, which clearly wasn't just any star. And here comes the question, what exactly was that star? Theories abound. A planetary alignment. Some astronomers suggest it was a conjunction of planets, shining bright enough to grab attention in the sky. A supernova. Like a star exploding, visible for a time and then disappearing. Or a straight-up miracle. Something completely supernatural, created by God specifically for that moment. Some even suggest it wasn't a literal star at all, but rather the manifestation of an angel. After all, in several places in the Bible, angels are referred to as stars. And you know what makes it even more mysterious? This star wasn't just visible. It moved. And more, it stopped exactly over the place where Jesus was. Which, let's be honest, makes no sense within the normal laws of astronomy. The fact is, after 2,000 years, this remains one of the most fascinating mysteries of Christmas. Now, if you want to go deeper in your Bible study, check out my exclusive resource, Mind Maps of all the books of the Bible, designed to make your learning easier and more effective. You'll also get bonus materials to take your Bible journey to the next level. Don't miss out. Click the link in the description to get instant access. And before you go, don't forget to watch the next video that's showing up on your screen. It's one you won't want to miss. Stay in peace, and see you next time.